Namaste and greetings. I, Sinha, researcher at IMPRI, Impact and Policy Research Institute, Prabhav एवं नीति अनुसंधान संस्थान, नई दिल्ली, extend my warmest welcome to you all at IMPRI #Web Policy Talk. Today, we have gathered here for a panel discussion on the topic Education and Union Budget 2022 to 2023 as a part of the series The State of Education #Education Dialogue. This event is being organized by IMPRI Center for ICT for Development. Now let me take this moment to introduce the gathering. As the chair of today's session, we have with us Professor Sachidanand Sinha, Professor at the Center for the Study of Regional Development, Jawaharlal Nehru University, JNU, New Delhi. We welcome you, sir.
Thank you.
Moving to our esteemed panelists for today, we have with us Professor Mona Khare, who is a professor and head of the Department of Educational Finance at National Institute of Educational Planning and Administration, New Delhi. We are honored to have you, ma'am. Welcome to the session. We are delighted to have with us Dr. Protiva Kundu, who is the thematic lead of social sectors at the Center for Budget and Governance Accountability, New Delhi. We welcome you, ma'am.
Thank you.
We are fortunate to have Professor Saumen Chattopadhyay, Professor and Chairperson at Zakir Husain Center for Educational Studies, Jawaharlal Nehru University, JNU, New Delhi. Welcome to the session, sir. We are pleased to be joined by Dr. Y. Suresh Reddy, Director at SRF Foundation, Gurgaon. We welcome you, sir.
Namaste.
Now I invite our chair, Professor Sachidanand Sinha, to initiate the discussion with his opening remarks and to proceed with this discussion. We look forward to learning from our esteemed panelists. Thank you.
Thank you, Sinha. Thank you, IMPRI. I think this is the right time, 4 days after the budget was presented, to in fact, that we have been in a position to internalize some of it, look across as to what is happening on the ground in the area of education, and also with related aspects within the budget, because all of these are going to have an impact also on education, particularly on school education. Certainly higher education will also impact it in a certain way, because there are some remarkable shifts that one can perhaps witness. I think, the panelists here would be in a position to throw sufficient light and help us understand the dynamics, and particularly after, we had this 2 years of school closing down and universities closing down. So, the challenges are too many. And what the new, the budget brings for us in 22-23, I would request the panelists, whosoever perhaps could also throw some light on how education budget has been behaving over the years, because that would also perhaps tell us as to what is this 11.8 or 12% increase in the budgetary allocation for 22-23, in what way it's likely to shape up. I was listening to some of the people who understand budget and finance, they say that effectively, if you look into whatever increase that has been proposed here and there, of course, there are also areas where things have declined, or maybe there are no allocations. May eventually work out to be close to about 5 to 7% lower than what perhaps is being made out, which I was just checking up the statistics, and it it became very clear to me that, we have not, perhaps, the last year's revised estimates are much lower than what we did in 18-19. So without taking much of the time between, I think, we should invite the panelists. They are the ones who perhaps have gone through the figures in a much more systematic way. And I think the concern before us is to, in fact, look at those children, about 250 million children who, in fact, were affected adversely during the pandemic. There is a lot to catch up and this will have to be made largely through the initiative of the state and the government, the private sector, and the ICT can only play a supplementary role. But there is much that needs to be seen as to how it's going to transform the learning abilities and capabilities in the schools, in their neighborhood. So over to, I would rather invite our first panelist, Dr. Protiva Kundu from Center for Budget and Governance. I think, she will make the initial remarks about the budget and perhaps take care of school education within the budget. So, Dr. Prativa.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Arjun and IMPRI for giving me this opportunity to talk on this issue. I have a presentation. Let me share my screen. So, I mean, we have seen the last 2 years, it's both the years are unusual, and we have seen that how the COVID-19 and COVID-induced lockdown has exposed the fault lines in public provisioning of social services, delivery of social services, and education is not an exception. Is my screen coming, the full screen? Is this visible?
Yes, it's fine.
Okay, thank you. So, the whole social sector was affected because of this pandemic. And if we look at this year's economic survey, then we all know that education is in concurrently. So both union government and state both have the responsibility of financing. So let me first see what is the scenario in social sector that economic survey has shown that it is telling that in the last 2 years, I mean, that means 2021 and 21-22, that during the pandemic, there is increase in social sector budget in terms of total as percentage of total expenditure as percentage of GDP as well. And this is the public expenditure, means both center and state together were putting money for social sector. And within this social sector, if we look at the distributions, by social sector means here we are talking about education, health, drinking water, sanitation, urban development, welfare of SC, ST, nutrition, etc. And within that, if we look at the pattern of fund distribution, from 2014-15, 46% of the social sector expenditure was going for education. And if we look the trend, it's continuously decreasing. And the recent year data available 21-22 is 36.6%. Again, here I'm talking about both center and state together. Now, we all know that last 2 years, obviously health should get priority because of the situation, but it is not the case that in the last 2 years, education was not getting adequate resources, but the trend is, I mean, ongoing for, at now it's for last 7-8 years. So this was the background of the finances. Now, this budget, when the government was presenting, we need to keep in mind the other things on which background this budget was getting presented and what we were expecting from the sector. So we just not talk about the pandemic, but what was the status of school education before pandemic is important. Then during pandemic, because of the school closure, we have seen that how educational inequality has increased. So unequal cost of school closure is an important factor to keep in mind. And then after after this third wave of COVID, when the situation is getting improved little bit, and when there is talk about reopening of schools, then what role budget should play in this scenario? And finally, when we have last year, we got the National Education Policy 2020. So the rolling out of NEP recommendations or implementation of NEP recommendations, what is there in the budget? So these are the under these four things, these four backdrop, the budget was presented. So what we have, first, let me just talk about little bit what was the situation before the pandemic. So it gives us a picture that what was the state of education. From the NSS data, we have seen 3.2 crore children were out of school. Around 40% adolescent girls who are out of school, as per NCPCS survey. Enrollment in government school for the first time it has come down to less than 50%. Not even the half of the enrollment was in government school, and there is increase in private unaided schools. Enrollment has increased in private unaided schools. Teacher share in government school decreased from 54% to 51%. And whether the last point is learning crisis, both in public and private schools. If we refer assess survey, if we refer as a national achievement survey, everywhere we see this was the scenario. Then when this pandemic started in March 2020, when because of the safety measures, government closed all the educational institutions. The various media reports, survey reports shows a number of factors. A study by logged out the Dreys and other some of the other researchers, the report recently came. They have shown that 8% only in the rural area could attend online classes regularly, and 37% were not at all studying. Not attending any online classes. Then there is Azim Premji University study, which is saying that 92% students had lost at least one language ability. Again, the recent ASA 2021 survey has shown that there is reverse school migration. Now enrollment in government school has increased, and between these last 2 years, it has increased from 66% to 70% within 1 year, 2021 to 21-22. There are some other studies which are showing that what could be the possible impacts because of the education going to the virtual platform. So a study by Malala Fund is showing more than 10 million more secondary school age girls could be out of school, and they are at the risk of early marriage, early pregnancy, etc. Then campaign against child labor, another they do survey on child labors, and they have shown in different states like Tamil Nadu. In the period of last year, the number of child incidents of child labor increased from 28% to 80%. In West Bengal, 105%. There is increase in nutritional insecurity. Studies are showing. Again, an Azim Premji study has shown that around 83% urban and 73% rural household had consumed less food during this lockdown. Now, these are all the data from different media reports or surveys, but we don't have any pan-India data. So to understand the extent of impact of COVID on children who are school going, but what we have understood from this scenario, that it's not about only school closure, is not about only affecting learning. It has a long-lasting impact in terms of nutrition, in terms of mental health, physical health. So in this backdrop, we got a budget. Now, again, we need to focus on reopening of educational institution that is going to happen now. So for that, what we need a basic school infrastructure to implement the COVID safety protocols. We need to have a survey to identify the out of school children. We need to have human resources in place, capacity building for teachers, because teachers are no more just like educators. They have to play the role of mentors, or they have to take care of the well-being of children's mental health. So there is a need for curriculum remodeling, the learning deficit that has happened. There is need for remedial learning. And overall, if we don't know what would be the situation, so parallelly, if we go to again go for online education, or if we need to choose hybrid mode, then creation of digital infrastructure is also important. So in this backdrop, we got a budget of 4,277 crore. And that means, which is basically from the 21-22B or earlier year's budget estimate, a 12% increase. And the increase is both in the both of the departments, Department of School Education and Literacy and Department of Higher Education. Now, these are all we are looking at the absolute numbers. But if we really take the inflation in picture, then it's basically an incremental budgeting. But what does these figures show in terms of ratios? If we look at the pattern of spending as per the Ministry of Education's budget as percentage of union budget, for the last few years, I mean, in 2016-17, it was 3.6% of union budget was going for education, which has dropped down to 2.6%. And if we compare it in terms of as percentage of GDP, again 0.47% of GDP to it has dropped down to 0.4% of GDP. That means we can see over time the union share of the union budget for education is actually decreasing. Why this is important, we have to look at in terms, as I mentioned earlier, that since education is the role of both the responsibility of center and state, that means if we need to, the vision of NEP or the Kothari Commission from long back, what we are talking about 6% of GDP, if we really need to reach that target, that means now the responsibility is more on states. But at the same time, we have seen the states are so much resource starved. The revenue mobilization of states have hampered a lot during last 2 years. So center and state together is now spending 4.4% of GDP. That means we still have to increase our budget to 1.6%. But within this 4.4% of GDP, basically 2.8% of GDP is going for school education. And in the whole share, how much is then coming from Ministry of Education, which is the nodal ministry? 0.25% of GDP of school education is basically the union government's contribution towards the school education. So, so that means the 4% of GDP is coming actually from states. Now, this is the overall budget. If we now disaggregated the budget across the different and more, another point to here mention that till November, if we look at the Comptroller and Auditor General, the CGA account, till November, the government has able to spend only 60%. The ministry is able to spend only 60% of budget. That means we are expecting in the coming 4 months, they will spend 40% of the budget, and that is impossible. So also next year, we could see the expenditure would be much lesser than what they have even predicted in the revised estimate. So a disaggregated picture of across schemes. Why it is important, the Samagra Shiksha Abhijan, this is the key centrally sponsored scheme of school education. Every sort of interventions are now coming under Samagra Shiksha Abhijan. If we see that, yeah, there is 20% increase in the overall budget of in Samagra Shiksha Abhijan. But again, if we compare that budget with the pre-COVID situation, that means the allocation in the 2021 for Samagra Shiksha Abhijan was around 38,900 crore. But if when there is need for more resources, the Samagra Shiksha is getting much lesser. And why it is more important, at the same time, if we look at the budget for Kendriya Vidyalaya and Navodaya Vidyalaya, the model central schools, in both the institutions, the budget has increased, but they cater a very few number of children. Most of the government school children are basically beneficiaries of Samagra Shiksha Abhijan. And we have also talked about the nutrition aspect. The nutrition midday meal has come in a new avatar. It's a new name now, and it has also said that the pre-primary school children will come under the PM Poshan. So there is more coverage the scheme is going to. More children the scheme is going to cover, but at the same time, the budget has dropped. 2021-22, in the period of pandemic, the budget was 11,500, but it has now decreased to 10,234 crore. The other important aspects is the question that we should ask: whatever budget is given, how inclusive was this budget? Whether there is any effort to inclusive recovery of education. So in this case, we need to see what is there for girls, for scheduled caste children, scheduled tribe children, children with disabilities, because they are largely affected, the most affected because of the pandemic. There is only one scheme specific to girls, that is National Scheme for Incentive to Girls Children for Secondary Education. And this scheme is for SC/ST girls who have passed class 8. The scheme got discontinued this year. Pre-matric scholarship for scheduled caste children and children of the families whose parents are engaged with the the manual scavenging occupation largely. The scholarships budget has decreased. Then scholarship for students with disabilities decreased. The National Child Labor Project, which is important because whatever measures we largely, what happened every time, instead of taking preventive measures, we go for curative measures. And if the incidence of out of children has increased, and if there is, so report says that child labor has increased, the National Child Labor Project has an important role to mainstreaming this child labor into the school education. But there is a drastic budget cut from 120 crore to 30 crore. Though I will not talk about higher education, just to mention that similar feature is we can see for the scholarship schemes, the student financial aid in terms of loans to the students, and then the PM Research Fellowship. If we club all these together, the budget has again decreased. So the kind of cost, the direct cost benefits to scholarship stipends that directly help the children, which are enabled to keep the students in the system, retain them in the system, those are the schemes have suffered a lot. And last point I just want to mention, because I talked so much about the Samagra Shiksha Abhijan, because the scheme is so important for school education and all the interventions are going through Samagra Shiksha Abhijan. The budget has stopped. Whatever we have seen, the budget, the more focus is on digitization, on online education. There is announcement of the digital teachers, everything, the most of the interventions are through Samagra Shiksha Abhijan. And other than that, the only scheme that has been mentioned, PM eVidya, that there is again under PM eVidya, the budget has, there is a cut in budget from, I think it's from, I forgot the number, but there is a budget cut, huge budget cut in the under PM eVidya. And more importantly, the proposal that from 12 to 200 television channel, again, we need to quote the government's own data, Department of School Education's own survey, that during the last 2 years, online education through television, only 5.5% children actually use this media to study. I mean, for learning, they use this particular media. Then again, what we are proposing, that increasing the television channel, whereas Samagra Shiksha Abhijan has got only 20% increase. And the important fact is that of this Samagra Shiksha budget, 88% is financed through education sales. Now, we shouldn't bother from where the resources coming, but why it's bothering us, because we have seen there is increase in, I mean, projection for increase in tax revenue. There is projection of higher economic growth. And at the same time, we have seen the last years, that whatever the education says is being projected would be collected, 2,000 crore less collection happened. And that's why this scheme has got lesser amount of resources. So if there is not gross budgetary support for this key centrally sponsored scheme, naturally it will affect the larger population, I mean school going population to a larger extent. And that's why it could have been more judicious to put this money on Samagra Shiksha Abhijan, but we couldn't see that. Rather, we have seen through this this announcement of online education, etc., which was silent, but it has somehow created a backdoor entry to privatization. The process has started earlier. Last year, we have seen the STARS project of World Bank. This time, there are two new projects under the NEP has been announced. One is Exemplar, one is Aspire. Aspire is again going to be financed through ADB money. So overall, this is the situation of school education, which we need to, I mean, the budget doesn't give us much hope. But the state budgets are coming, so we hope that the state will take some, I mean, put some more resources for education sector. Otherwise, it would be difficult for the children to basically come back and get back to the previous level of learning and education. Thank you.
Thank you, Prativa. I mean, now we can thank you for highlighting some of the issues and the fact that, you know, the central allocation or central contribution, central government contribution to the education is coming down. It has declined over the years, and that in what way it shows the thinking on part of the government. So let's hear a little more, particularly in the context of higher education as well as the larger education sector, from Professor Mona Khare. Professor Khare, welcome to make your presentation.
Thank you very much, Chair. And let me begin, first of all, by thanking Dr. Arjun and the IMPRI team for giving me this opportunity to share my views and be a part of this highly learned panel. Pravita has already talked a lot about how the budgetary allocations in the school sector per se have panned over a little longer period of time. So maybe I would focus a little more on the current budget and share my views as to what were our expectations and where has the current budget fell short of our expectations, and how we would like to see some of the changes to be coming in future, if at all possible. Not to say that with the National Education Policy 2020 now in its second year of implementation and a little clearer picture of how the implementation guidelines have been framed by the government, which shows the very holistic, very expansive kind of a work which is required to be done in the education sector. The overall increase of this 11.86% that the finance minister had been claiming, does it seem to be enough, is one question that anyone would have asked. Also, it is very, very clear after what Pravita has already shown us that we are going to be very far away from meeting the oft-repeated 6% GDP for education, which has been eluding us for more than now half of a century, if I may say so. So just when I was looking at the current budget, the first thing that comes to one's mind is to weigh it against the promises that have been made in the National Education Policy 2020. So looking at some of the critical areas which were highlighted in the policy that related to 4 E's of increasing enrollments across board, trying to achieve universalization of education, not just at the elementary level, but also at the secondary level, followed by equity and inclusion. So very, very expanded definition of SEDGs, the socioeconomically disadvantaged groups, to be including for the first time the transgender, to be expanded to children out of school, street children, children from the, obviously the children from the socioeconomically backward communities, which always existed, but many more, especially the talented children, the specially able children, all of them now coming into the fold of SEDGs in an expanded format. The third E, which the National Education Policy was very vocal about, both in the school sector as well as in the higher education sector, was the employability issue, the skills for employability, and lastly, of course, the excellence, that is the learning gaps, the learning crisis that we often read about in various reports and has continued to put us to shame many a times at global comparisons. Now, with these 4 E's in picture, if we look at how the current budget has panned itself out to achieve these, one would see that there is an excessive focus on improving the digital infrastructure and moving from a face-to-face mode to a digital mode of education. Now, to what extent this is going to be helpful in a country like India, where the digital divide has come to fore more so as a stark reality during the pandemic. I am not against any kind of digital infrastructure to be created and to be used as a supplementary means of enhancing the access and learning for children who are from a disadvantaged background or living in remote areas. But what we mean to say is we would have been very happy had there been some specific announcement and efforts at bringing the children back to the schools, and how they could have a more holistic learning environment created in the schools, how there could have been better security and better counseling, nutritional support being given to the schools, all of which they have been at a loss during the past 2 years and also in the previous years. Now, the entire focus of building the digital infrastructure for the rural areas, also the e-Vidya program, be it by the one class, one TV channel, or promoting e-learning in various languages, regional languages, or developing various other modes of e-learning, remote learning, all of them are welcome, but they could not have been enough for what we were looking for in the current budget. And over focus on improving the digital infrastructure and digitizing the whole education sector, particularly at the school level, may have its own costs to play in future. The other area where one can see the current budget to be focusing is skill-based education, with 5,000 skill centers to be opened, the ITIs to be revamped, an entire digital ecosystem to be developed for skilling, reskilling, upskilling, etc. All of this is certainly welcome. The National Skills Qualifications Framework to be brought in line with the industry needs. All of this ideally is very welcome. But when you look at it from the current needs, one can say that this sounds more like a strategic plan for the midterm or maybe the long term, rather than a budget which has to be put into immediate action. So what is that immediate budgetary action plan that one would have been looking for? So for that, let us take a very quick look at what were the critical areas that demanded very specific financial support as per the national education policy. To begin with, obviously, the early childhood care and education, which has been brought into the formal fold of school education for the first time, with 3 to 6 years old of children who were hardly in schools, formal schools so far. This is a number which would have demanded a lot of specific support for Anganwadis and the primary school systems to be upgraded, for the teachers to be trained, for the Anganwadi workers to be trained to take care of these children, specific reading material, equipment to be built, and more so the midday meal scheme, which is not just going to include these ECC children, but also there was a talk of expanding the midday meals to include breakfast and also in the near future to secondary school. So one would have liked to hear something very specific in terms of how ECCE could have been made stronger in the current budget. The second is something which Pravita had also pointed at, is the equity and inclusion issue. She also talked about how the girl children have been at a greater disadvantage during the pandemic. And not just to say so, the policy had also specifically talked about two kinds of funds. One was the Gender Inclusion Fund, and also the Inclusion Fund, wherein some specific facilities and scholarships were to be given for gifted children, children with special needs, the Divyang children. All of these have, as Pravita also pointed, many of the scholarships have either been stopped, discontinued, the allocations have reduced. All of these certainly require a relook at. So health, nutrition, mental well-being. Of course, there was a talk about a national mental health mission to be started, but how far it will be able to be accessed by small children, by children in the schools, even students in the colleges, is yet to be seen. The third area where one would have liked to see some greater allocation, or some specific at least allocation, was with respect to teacher development and special trainings for teachers to equip themselves for teaching for the 21st century, not just by utilizing the e-technology or the digital technology for teaching learning as an aid for teaching learning, but also to be able to provide the holistic mentoring to the students, which is much lacking in the schools as well as at the collegiate level. Coming to the higher education sector, now if we look at the budgetary allocations, is always the major chunk of the budget has gone to the school sector. About 60% of it has gone to the school sector, and higher education, which in the past had been witnessing a slight increase in its share, this time has seen a drop in its share. Now, when we are talking about higher education to be a propellant for competitive growth and taking India to greater heights when it comes to global recognition, a fall in the share of higher education is also something which one may like to look at. More particularly, when we are looking at the propositions that were made in the National Education Policy, which talks categorically about increasing the GER in the higher education sector, converting all the existing universities into large-size multidisciplinary universities, with greater emphasis on holistic and skill, vocational, integrated education at the higher levels also. In the previous budgets, some skilled universities were opened, announced, but what is it that is going to happen to them now? We would have loved to see something more about them to be talked in this budget. Also, the National Research Foundation, which was a welcome proposition in the National Education Policy. We would have loved to see some specific research funds also, because during the pandemic, the research scholars at the higher education level have also suffered a lot in terms of discontinued or lesser fellowships, delayed fellowships, disrupted research facilities, access to libraries, etc. All of this, how it could have been helped out. In fact, there are some very contrary allocations that have happened in the current budget. For example, there is a big push which has been given to digital education with the announcement of a digital university, and many other public institutions of higher repute to join that in a spokes and hub model, with so much of e-content to be developed, with almost 750 e-labs in maths and science, and about 75 or so, if I remember the number correctly, labs for skills training to be opened, etc. And yet the allocation for the national digital education has seen a drop, which is certainly an irony when we are talking about so much of push to be given to digital education, with so many propositions made in the budget. Similarly, the education policy talked about promoting multidisciplinarity, and now in the budget we are talking about opening a few more single discipline kind of institutions and strengthening them. Although strengthening of agricultural universities is welcome in a country like India, but how all of these universities could have been made multidisciplinary is something that we were looking at. Opening of some special courses, announcing of some special courses in the fintech sector, financial management in the gift city. These are some propositions which have been made, or announcements which have been made in the budget, which don't seem to fit in line with the propositions made in the new education policy. Also, similarly, the tilt towards urban component of learning to be enhanced, like the urban design and architecture, urban planning institutes to be strengthened. So suddenly, somewhere down the line, one finds that there is a greater tilt towards corporatization of both at the school as well as the higher education level. Because if you look at the existing digital infrastructure in the country, one would find that it is more dominated by the private corporate sector. The digital education providers in the country are more in the private sector. And if this kind of a trend continues, we might like to question ourselves if the very idea and spirit of quality education for all and an inclusive education society will become a reality in coming future or not. I think I will stop here because later, if there is time, I would like to take 2 minutes maybe to share where is it that we could take things as per our understanding. Thank you very much for your time and the opportunity.
Thank you, Professor Khare. And I think you have covered both the sectors, rather more than the two sectors. You have also gone to the area of skill development and a variety of other issues about which I think, you know, we also had, we also learned something from Dr. Kundu. You know, one aspect which you really pointed out, which is glaring, that, you know, we have the new education policy and the direction that it is likely to take us is somewhat missing in the budget. You know, it looks that, you know, the two are going on two parallel lines. You know, we are reproducing what we have done in the past. The two areas which, in fact, I think everybody to take note of, our listeners to take note of, one is the fact that one was the differentiating aspect of this budget, not that, you know, it was not talked about earlier, was the early childhood education, which in fact, we have the very first few paragraphs from Kothari Commission talks about early childhood, but perhaps, we didn't have the resources at that particular point of time, and whatever may have been the constraints, maybe we didn't have teachers. But the fact of the matter is that now that we thought of integrating early childhood education with the schools as well as with the Anganwadis, what I was really looking at is, and this is something, which all of us need to in fact pay attention on, that while the midday meal, which in fact would spread over other institutions and also include breakfasts and things of that sort, the allocation there has come down. And if one were to perhaps look at the allocation that Ministry for Women and Child Development have received, I have some statistics here. There is a decline from 2.46 to 2.35 crores in the budget for the Ministry of Women and Child Development. Budgetary allocation for Saksham has gone down. That is particularly portion has been reduced by 11.28% from the earlier year. So in fact, now while we have this pandemic situation where children are the ones, and both of you, our earlier panelists, did talk about child labor. So maybe our problems are quite, and they needed to be prioritized, and that's where Professor Khare pointed out that, well, these were the expectations. The girl children, among those who have really dropped out, the girl children face much greater challenges. In higher education, we have these problems of fellowship, and while I may not be so much inclined to be personally, talking about the national research foundations or whatever, because that has a kind of a top controlling funding is on another thing, but the fact is that there is a lot that we need to really engage on several of these aspects, including the fact that are we really going towards privatization in a much bigger way at this juncture, when the question of equity, when the question of access still remains to be addressed. So what do you really make out of how the government understands equity and access? Is it the digital platform which perhaps once created would perhaps take care of everything, all those who are moving or dropped out, or those who could not perhaps be brought within the spectrum of face-to-face education? And the data that we have from ground, especially working with nearly 600 some panchayats, that one of the organizations has been working even during the pandemic, is of the opinion that the number of children who dropped out in those panchayats is much bigger, and that not more than 8%, or rather 14%, what he shared with me, had any kind of an access on the digital platform. That was not a very regular one. So I think, I just summarized some of the points and also flagged off some of the issues which I would expect Professor Chattopadhyay to take care of. So over to you, Professor Chattopadhyay.
So thank you very much, Professor Sinha. I don't know whether I can do justice to the issues that you have raised. And I must thank Dr. Arjun Kumar for giving me an opportunity again to participate in this panel discussion along with my very esteemed panelist. What I would like to do is to focus on two things. But before I begin, I would try to make an attempt to understand the signals that are emanating from the Union Budget 22-22, 22-23 for restructuring the higher education sector. I'll be focusing mainly on higher education sector, not mainly, but exclusively. And what is the vision that is getting articulated in the budget numbers? What is the signal? What is the logic behind this? So, though the link apparently between the NEP 2020 and the budget numbers, the direction that they provide, is apparently weak, but I see that there is a link, and the link has to be understood. First of all, the purpose of education is being revisited. What is the objective of education that is being reconceptualized? There are two major aspects that I would like to focus on. One is the education national skill qualification framework. And the second part of my talk would be on the digital university. Now, what is the purpose of education that I can make out from the budget numbers? One is that education is getting increasingly reoriented towards skill. The purpose of education is skill, and that is how education is going to contribute to the economic growth. Now, since independence, if I may argue that the growth has mainly been driven by the physical infrastructure development. So in this budget, when the government is going to bank on the increased momentum in the revenue collection, the tax collection, I mean, and to spend on capital expenditure, if you remember the initial part of the FM speech, the PM Gati Shakti, the focus would be on energy, the focus would be on urban, focus would be on therefore transport. The focus is on therefore capital expenditure. The focus is not on education and health. The focus is on infrastructure development. So the vision of attaining growth, which is inclusive, seems to be getting undermined, seems to be getting compromised, because it is only the need for education to provide skilled labor force who can participate in the growth process. And the second objective is to be a part of the global higher education, is to embrace the global higher education. And the third purpose of education, the way university purpose is being defined, though the signals are not prominent, but this is, I believe, the future direction will be. One is that increase participation of the private sector in university affairs, PPP, and the university industry linkage. So these are the three: the skill, part of the global higher education, and industry with increased private participation, PPP mode, and in industry university linkage to be more stronger. So let me focus on the national skill qualification framework. National skill qualification framework, there are two major purposes. One is, Monaji has already talked about it. It is mainly to prepare the labor force for the need for industry. So there is a need for benchmarking of quality. There is a need for identification of the institutions. And this benchmarking of quality will also enable the students to exercise their freedom of choice of courses so that they can move from one to the other. Now, this has to be understood in the context of two very important statements, which is there in the NEP. National Education Policy says that the gross enrollment rate in higher education from the present 26-27% to be raised to 50% by 2035. And this rise in the gross enrollment rate in higher education would be contributed to the extent of 50% by vocational education. So the thrust is very clear. The expansion of higher education in future will have to be driven primarily by increased participation in vocational education. You can also read one more statement in the NEP 2020 that says that only 5% of our workforce is trained in vocational education, compared to 52% in the United States and 75% in Germany. So the focus is very clear. Now the national skill qualification framework has to be juxtaposed with the academic bank of credit, for which the government has shown enough seriousness in the recent past. There is a budgetary allocation. The draft regulation is already up on the website. Now, what does ABC, the academic bank of credit, seek to achieve, and how does it get reconciled with the national skill qualification framework? Now, in ABC, students are being given the freedom to choose courses. Now, when we are talking about that the institutions have to be multidisciplinary. If you don't want to spend much on us, the higher education institutions, and still you are expecting us to be multidisciplinary, how do you achieve that? It's very simple. That you focus on digital education. You focus on the mobility of the students so that they can choose courses across the institution. And national skill qualification framework is one of the objective of the formation of the General Education Council, which is one of the 4 pillars of the regulatory framework. At the top is the HECI, Higher Education Commission of India, and that would be supported by 4 pillars. And one of the pillars is General Education Council. And the General Education Council is supposed to facilitate the free movement of the students in terms of the choice of courses between general education and vocational education. So how do you encourage students to go for vocational education? When you tell them that, look, you take up some courses which will enhance your employability. At the same time, you can pursue some courses from general education. So as I understand, you do sociology, you do history. At the same time, you also pick up some courses so that your employability is enhanced in the job market. You need not remain constrained by the discipline, the employability potential of the discipline that you have chosen. There are now many windows, and let the students can pursue the courses that they would think are useful for them, are relevant for them. So when I'm arguing that there is a purpose of education which is getting redefined, whether it is global higher education to be a part of the global higher education, or the education budget getting more and more skill-oriented, the focus has to be on ICT, the focus has to be on digitization, the focus has to be on adoption of technology in the classroom. Without that, you cannot achieve both, neither skill nor a part of the global higher education. So in ABC, Academic Bank of Credit, the students can now offer courses, and the purpose of ABC is to allow the student to have free entry, free exit, and the time duration of the courses, that let the students decide, so that you are helping the student to enter the job market without completing their courses, and they can again come back and study parallelly and complete the course as well as be part of the job market. So this link between education and job market is going to be strengthened because of the skill and the flexibility that is being provided to the students. Now, this Academic Bank of Credit and National Skill Qualification Framework both need a thrust on the digital technology. Now, digitization has been a very favorite policy objective world over in some of the countries. What does it do? It achieves expansion of the education sector at a cost which is relatively lower because of the possibility of expanding the classroom by transcending the boundaries of the classroom. And you can reach remote, and you can increase the flexibility, the freedom to choose the courses. All these things are very essential. Now, this pandemic disrupted our classroom teaching. We had to transit to online teaching perforce. So the NEP 2020 announced end of July, followed by some of the public notices issued by the UGC, make it very clear that since we moved to online, let the momentum be sustained. Let us capitalize on the gains that you have made from making a transition to the online. Of course, we were not prepared. Students are still not prepared. The digital divide continues to be very, very relevant for us. And we are finding it difficult in the online teaching. The kind of interaction we think that we should have are not happening. But there is a force nevertheless. So the UGC letter says, in August 2020, and later on another letter from the UGC, public notice, they say that, look, let the students take 40% of the credit from Saumen platform, the other e-platforms or other universities. So the options before the students are being expanded. And why digital education helps in this purpose? Because the transaction cost of mobility is drastically reduced. And this thrust on digital technology is also going to help us achieve a part of the global higher education. What is a digital university? Now, before we understand a digital university, let us understand, I mean, all of us know, all of us realize it, but it's sort of mentioning it once again. What does online education do to our classroom teaching? First of all, the classroom walls cease to be of any relevance. So the moment we are in a virtual platform, we are virtually in a global classroom. The classroom can be global, right? It's not only national, it's a global. This seminar is also global, potentially speaking. So that means the students' number can increase. Second, these lectures can be recorded and can be converted to a digital product. So a service which is extinguished once the class period is over and we leave the classroom is now a digital product. And third, the government says, and those who advocate digital education, they also argue the same, that the quality can be enhanced because the quality teaching, quality content can be replicated at a very low marginal cost in number of times. That is the beauty of digital education, and that can be achieved, which means that the students can now get good quality education sitting in the remotest part of the country, remotest of the villages, because of online education. It's a different matter that the digital connectivity is poor and all, but that is the vision which is coming up. Now, because of the digital education, what is happening, because of the online education, what is happening, the space, time, and quality associated with education are getting redefined. The university space doesn't matter, it's insignificant now. The classroom is insignificant now, right? And the classroom and the university space are not being considered to be significant, not being considered to be of importance or relevance, which means the purpose of education is skill. Purpose of education is not to socialize, not to let them socialize, not to let them appreciate the diversity, not to let them understand each other. And the space for the student as a form of to express dissent, to participate in activities, right? All these things will shrink. They have already shrunk and they will shrink further. Now, digital university means that Monaji was already trying to explain that some of the best universities will connect. So is a digital university means there is no need for any campus. There is no need for just barely an office will do. It will just connect the teachers and the students from all over the world so that they can gain from each other's expertise, gain from each other's knowledge, collaborate and achieve excellence. They get a taste of excellence. Now, this is where the question which is important for us, that is the aspiration to participate in the global higher education good for the Indian higher education overall. Now, why I'm saying that there is a very clear thrust for global higher education in the budget, there are three more signals which have to be understood. The budget for internationalization, I'm not going to share my Excel sheet now, Protiva has done a job, but this is for my higher education. If you look at the budget for internationalization, you will see the revised estimate is exactly equal to the budget estimate for 21-22. What does it mean? It means the budgetary allocation of 160 crore for internationalization is supposed to be spent by 31st of March within 1.5 months. That means the signal has been given that you spend the budget. So when you look at the budget, I always look at, or we should always look at, the budgetary estimate and the revised estimate and budget estimate for the next year. Because how the money has been spent, true, we had the second wave, true, we had the disruption, but the signal is clear. So you will find, but certain items, the revised estimate is very close to the budgetary estimate. For certain items, revised estimate has exceeded the budgetary estimate. And how we are projecting the budgetary estimate for 22-23. All these are important signals. So internationalization, yes. If you look at the budget for world-class university, which is Institute of Eminence, Institution of Eminence, IOE, the world-class university, the revised estimate was much less. It was around 1,700 they couldn't spend. But the budgetary estimate over revised estimate shows a jump of 41%. That means let the budgetary allocation be directed towards the select set of universities which have been accorded the status of institution of eminence to aspire to be a part of the world ranking, aspire to be a part of the world higher education. Then you also look at the newspaper report, the Radhakrishnan committee, the international branch campuses are going to be set up, being mooted. An IIT Delhi has already submitted something, and our JNU VCs is also part of the committee. So what they are going to do is to explore how some of the best universities, best institutions of a country can open campuses abroad, particularly in the Middle East. It can be Egypt, or it can be Egypt and the Middle East. So digital university, international branch campuses, world-class university, internationalization, the budget for this global management, there's a head called Planning Administration for Global Management. All these budget indicate very clearly that let us be a part of the global. And that aspiration of setting up a world-class university, when it was mandated, our Prime Minister made it very clear we should be part of, because we are second or third largest in the world today, and we don't feature very prominently in the world ranking. So the objective is very, very clear. So I would end my talk by reflecting on, is globalization good? The budget has already been shown, but I don't know whether I should share certain numbers, but let me do it. I'll take only a minute or so, if it is feasible. Prativa has already talked about it, so I don't want to go into the details. You see, the school, it's a very hodgepodge. I have not cleaned up the table, but school net of recoveries, higher education net of recoveries. If I'm comparing the budgetary increase, the column M over the revised estimate, you will see the higher education budget does show, the education budget overall does show an increase of 18.5%. But revised estimate by budgetary estimate, we could not spend enough. So 5.6% fall for school, 5.3%, for higher education, 6% fall. So these are the figures. But here you look at how we are projecting the future, budget by budget. Budget 22 by budget 21. For education as a whole, 12% rise, school 16%. But for higher education, the rise is merely 6%, right? Now look at the grant to the central universities. We spent a little more as per the budget, so 23% rise, budget by budget. IISc 17%, ISR 46%, IIM 37%, IITs is much less, 9%, NIT 11%, but UGC is only 4%, right? So UGC is not the priority, is very clear. And this is what I was trying to argue, the internationalization 25%, study in India, the national mission ICT, it's a significant jump, 400 crore budgetary estimate, whereas the budgetary estimate for this year, 21-22, was merely 150. So it's a significant jump. We could not spend what we budgeted for, but now there's, and we are going to do away with HIPAA. And this is the world-class university budget, 1,200 crore revised, and we are going to spend 1,700 crore. Now, is globalization good? Is globalization bad? It's a very difficult question. I believe we have to look at the higher education system as a whole, the way it is being restructured. It is getting more and more differentiated. It is getting more and more differentiated because NEP has talked about it, research university, teaching university, degree granting colleges and all. And when you have the world ranking universities, the WCU, world-class university, they should prioritize global over national over local. It's bound to be the case because that is why they have been mandated to achieve. If you look at the national and state level universities, we have to prioritize the local over the national and national over the global. Now, what is happening, therefore, because of this increasing differentiation within the higher education sector, the quality differences will get more acute. So the access is a very big question because the tuition fees, the thrust on cost recovery, the tuition fee, all are likely to rise over a period of time, and that the government will also standardize the allocation of budget through the HEGC, the Higher Education Grants Council in future. So in future, therefore, the excellence is to be measured in terms of the global purpose of education is skill, and university are supposed to contribute more to the industry. It's a different matter whether the industry and the market will truly reflect the need of the society for which the university should primarily be concerned with. That's a different issue, seems to be for the government. But as Prativa was trying to mention that, you see, given the thrust for capital expenditure and given the massification of higher education and inflation, the increase is not much. At least the budgetary pronouncement, the FM speech is not for education, is not for health. Possibly the momentum will be sustained, and I fear that education budget, even if it is there, some sort of increase in the budgetary allocation is unlikely to be realized because the thrust is that digitization, and the digitization will help us achieve to produce more skill by giving opportunity to the students to be part of the global, often at the expense of the national and the local interest. And Monaj has already said that, because of the possible uncertainty, there is no budgetary allocation for National Research Foundation. Possibly this year, the government will try and see how the UGC can be restructured to become HEGC as per the vision of the NEP. Let me stop here. Thank you, Professor Sinha. I'm through.
Thank you, Professor Saumen Chattopadhyay, for having thrown light on some of the aspects of the higher education, or maybe education in general, the vision of in the coming years as to how it's going to be reshaped, what are the signals and which direction the budget is trying to take us. Thank you for throwing significant light on these aspects. We'll come back to you, we'll come back to Monaji, and but in the meanwhile, let's have Dr. Suresh Reddy for his presentation. Over to you, Professor Dr. Reddy.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Sinha. Just I would like to supplement already what Dr. Kundu or Professor Khare and Professor Chattopadhyay mentioned. Basically, I would like to focus on that, school education, especially the budget allocation and utilization, over a period of time. If you see, we have been talking about since 1965 Kothari Commission, further the subsequent national education policies, talking about 6% of GDP has to be allocated for the education. So apart from that, the right to education, that is 2009, the act we enacted in the parliament, is almost all now 12 years of time. And if you see that, as per the recent in Parliament response, one of the questions, the minister mentioned that 25.5% of the schools are complying the RTE standards or norms, and still the 74.5% of the schools are not able to meet the standards and norms of the Right to Education Act after 12 years of time. And in between that, a couple of years back, the national education policy, which announced, and that this also talks about like the 6% of GDP has to be allocated for the education. But so far, it is around 3%. That is the level currently the allocations are being made. Apart from that, if you see that the pandemic last 2 years, how it played a role of the promote the learning gap among the children, and the nutritional gap as well as well-being. This is unexpected. The pandemic across the country derailed the progress of the education what we have been making, and especially the children lost their learning what they learned earlier. Instead of learning new things, next level things, they lost the learning also. So and also the government of India also has the national flagship program Beti Bachao and Beti Padhao. That is the campaign we have been seeing that year on year to promote the girls' education, and especially during the pandemic situation, how especially the children of the secondary, senior secondary students, how they missed the education and dropping out from the schools. So that the things. One is the allocation of the budget is low. Second thing is meeting up the RTE responsibilities are 25% level, and the pandemic of 2 years of havoc, and the many things, and also apart from this, the utilization of the budgets, irrespective of the union government or the state governments, and if we end up the year, if you can see that because of the poor governance, the whatever the limited budget allocated, the same budget also not 100% able to utilize it. That is the issue of the governance. One has to look at it with this background. If you see that during this pandemic situation, the education system, especially school education system, if we structure them into 4 levels, one is that the high end, the private schools. Second one is the Navodaya Kendriya Vidyalayas run by the central government, as well as the state government schools across the country, and the low-cost budget private schools. Out of these 4, especially the last 2 segments, the state education board schools and low-cost budget private schools. These are the schools where the children are studying. They suffered a lot because of the digital divide. When the schools were shut for the 2 years, at least the education was happening in high-end private schools and Kendriya Navodaya Sainik schools, where some level of the digital infrastructure, digital capabilities, and the content availability, and being the medium of education is English. So because of these things, these schools didn't miss much compared to the second 2 categories of the schools, where they struggled a lot. Almost all only the studies shows that 8% of the children got the online learning education opportunity in government schools, and 42% of children, they never got an opportunity of using the digital platform for the education as per the University of Study. And also what Ajim Premji Foundation studies says that 60 to 90% of the learning loss for the children. In this context, the budget of the Union government of 2022-23, giving some focus to the digital, especially one TV for one class, like that, to be in regional languages, 200 channels, the e-content, virtual labs and e-labs. This is, I can say, it's in a welcome move because of, as per the changing times, we are dealing with the generation of Alpha, the generation of Z. These are the children. They are very much familiar or very much quick user of the technology, and that will be interactive technology. Though compared to our millennials or generation X, these are the segments our teacher community belongs to. So when compared to this generation X, millennial age group of the teachers, the generation Z and generation Alpha, the children, they are much more ahead of in using the technology and learning things. So from that perspective, so what the union budget is giving the emphasis for the digital based education. But again, here I have a couple of observations. So one is when you say virtual labs and e-labs, which are more kind of desirable things, as Sir Chattopadhyay just mentioned, that how the digital technologies can bring down the cost, and also it facilitates the pan-India global level collaborations and the learning and beyond the four walls of classrooms. It's a very good thing. When come to the one TV, one classroom, this is outdated. Actually, if you see that, this is not the new to the education system. Way back, almost 20 years back, the government of India has launched the satellite-based education, setting up the TVs in the schools and having the studio at the state capitals, telecasting the education. In today's context, whatever the current in the market, the content available in this, that is interactive in nature. Unless until you have a digital device in your hand, either laptop or desktop or mobile phone or tablet, you can't use that content currently available in the market. The TV medium we're talking about, it's more kind of monologue, the the passive learning kind of situation. And the children of this generation, if they have to glue to this TV-based education, unless the content is very rich, which is better than the multimedia content and better than the cinema content, what you see, that kind of thing, other children won't pay attention to that. So how this one TV, one classroom channels produce the content which is better in quality and attracts the children to the glued to the TV and any digital devices to make use of it. That is a challenging thing. One has to look at it. And second thing, in the regional languages, this is a very good move. So currently, whatever content is available, it is mostly in English and in Hindi, but not the regional languages of either South India or West India or East and Northeastern India kind of thing. So the regional languages channels is very good move, but need to focus on the content part. But I wish to hear that the government has to have even much more, like a transformational reforms or the allocation of the budget has to look at it, how to equip the schools, especially the digital access, the infrastructure, which is a huge gap. And digital capabilities of the teachers, as I mentioned, that these teachers belongs to either millennial or generation X sections, group. And out of this group, if unless until their capabilities are enhanced, and they may not able to match the expectations of the generation Z and generation Alpha. So that the capabilities of the digital capability teachers need to be enhanced. That is the one thing we have to focus. And other than this, the digital assessment part, that is also one has to look at it in a holistic manner. So with these comments, I would like to stop it here with one comment to say that, whatever is happening, it is happening in an incremental way, but we need to have the transformational focus in allocation and bringing the reforms and governance issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Reddy, for bringing in two, besides many other points, you really pointed out that, the three segments which really need to be emphasized. One is, of course, the process of transformation as to how this vision could perhaps, the vision that Professor Saumen Chattopadhyay, which is also seen, I mean, through him, one could see that it is built into the budget in some way or the other. But you also pointed out as to where the learning gaps have been greater, and can we really take care of these without having a kind of a traditional, conventional classroom? Because at the early level, you can't perhaps, we know even in the best of the households with all the gadgets, the learning processes, although there is no survey of that kind, but through whatever that we have been in a position to interact with our family members, our relatives, they do say that, especially for the primary and the upper primary, there has been a tremendous loss. It's true that, yeah, the generation, which in fact, the current generation is more technology savvy, they can be, perhaps, they can adapt to those situations. But then there are, we have a vision, but we don't really have a demonstrated kind of an proof to say, okay, that this can happen this way, neither in India nor anywhere in the world. So these are larger issues, but you have really pointed out some of these questions, and these questions will have to be looked at and debated upon. I think Professor Khare wanted to have some 2 or 3 minutes more for something that she wanted to share. Professor Khare, yeah, you wanted towards the end of your presentation, you said that maybe later I'll
so maybe I'll just take a minute. Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much. So I just want to end by saying, after listening to all the learned panelists also, that we may claim this budget to be futuristic in spirit, but certainly it appears to be a lopsided one and also a biased one, in my opinion. Why I say so is because when we are talking about, when we are aiming for a holistic quality education for all, then even for a quality futuristic education to be available, there are 3 kinds of major resources where the focus should have been: the human resources, the physical resources, and the digital resources. But the current budget seems to be more focused on digital resources. Also, if we look at the relative shares of school and higher education, and further bifurcation when it comes to scheme-based allocations and non-scheme-based allocations, we find that in the school sector, the major share goes to the scheme-based allocations, with Samagra Shiksha Abhiyan getting the major pie of the entire allocation. And we have already seen a lot of reports about the concerns when it comes to Samagra Shiksha Abhiyan. Prativa has also pointed out about the underutilization of the funds, and also despite an increase which has been promised this year, we are not very sure whether it will ever happen as per the previous experiences or not. If we look at the higher education sector again, we see that more than 99% of the share is marked for revenue, and a mere 18 point some crore against 40,000 plus crores for revenue, and 18.1% or some crore for the capital expenditure. So how, and we all know that a major proportion of the revenue expenditures so far in the higher education sector have been spent on the salaries and maintenance of the sector, and there is very little left for developmental activities in the higher education sector. So that is again something which has happened for a very long time. And when we are talking about revamping the entire higher education sector, there is need to see how we can increase the capital expenditures here as well. Also, why I call this to be biased is because we find that most of the attempts, be it the world-class institutions, the world-class universities, the elite institutions to be part of the hub and spokes model, or the very niche courses, be they the AI-based courses or the fintech-based courses, which have been specifically highlighted and pronounced in the budget, would certainly be limited to a very few sections of the student population. So by and large, if we see then what Pravita had also mentioned, we need to question ourselves, are we shying away to open doors or to open doors to quality education for the larger masses of our students, and in our attempts to be globally competitive or futuristic, we are in some way losing out on being more inclusive. Also, just by my last sentence, we understand that the budgetary like the money is always limited and we cannot have everything. There is so much on the platter, but certainly we need to prioritize by way of maybe adopting a 3-point formula as to look at the most vulnerable sections of the populations, the vulnerable groups, be it the out of school children, the transgender, the Divyang, or the SCDGs living in the remotest of locations, more vulnerable regions. There was a hint of aspirational districts to be touched by the Honorable Finance Minister in her speech, but not specifically for education per se in these districts. So maybe something specific about horizontal equalization funds, and also the third, that is to focus on more vulnerable facilities and activities. So when we are talking about a more integrated curriculum development with both vocational and skill-based and academic curricula, to what also Professor Saumen was referring as to how we can bring a greater integration between the two. So that curricular integration and certainly teacher development, which needs to be focused upon if we want to make our entire education system both globally competitive and also inclusive in nature. Thank you, Professor Sinha, for that second round of my
No, thank you. That round is
sharing.
open to everybody. All the other panelists, if they would like to add something to what has already been presented, you're most welcome, because the chair cannot really choose to be partial.
So I'm going first. I just want to
Yeah.
what Mona said. Other than the 2 points, I mean, so in this quasi-federal structure, what message Indian government is giving, that is very important. It matters. We have seen during the Swachhata Abhijan, what Union government is doing, most states are following the same thing. And similar thing in this budget, we have seen so much focus on digitization. We will see again in the planning, in the expenditure pattern, probably states will going to prioritize again these interventions. But as everyone has, I mean, Mona has said, Suresh ji has said that school is not basically only the place of learning, it's a space of socialization. So learning comes later. First, it's important to retain the children in the system. So reintegration of school is more important. And the states now, I mean, union budget is over now, state budgets are coming. Hopefully states will now give some priority, and for that strong leadership and political willingness is important. But other than all these things, what is more important, we should have more data, because data is a serious problem now in the social sector. So accessibility, availability, and quality data, if it is not there, then it would be very difficult to make policy analysis, do policy suggestions. So I think, I mean, now it has time also to devote some resources more on data part. I mean, gathering data and maintaining those data, and that should be in the public domain. Thank you.
So please unmute. Sachi sir.
Saumen, would you like to add
Yeah,
something?
yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
I have a question for Prativa or all the panelists. First of all, I agree, and that the comprehensive picture can only be obtained after we have a look at the state budget, because the center and the state together would give us a complete picture of the budgetary allocation for education and higher education. But I believe Prativa knows better. She is dealing with the budget almost on a daily basis. The states are more fiscally constrained. I mean, the fiscal crisis is more acute at the state level. For the center, it is little less, though 6.4% is the target of the fiscal deficit. But the thrust has been made very clear. Let us go for physical infrastructure, and social infrastructure can continue. My second clarification that I would like to seek from Prativa and all other panelists: how crucial is the distinction between revenue and capital expenditure? You see, the focus is capital, but for education and health, the revenue expenditure, I think, at least I can share from my experience, and Professor Sinha can also join. The basic expenses which are required to be incurred, other than the salaries, for the education sector have drastically been reduced. Salaries, okay, I mean, but the infrastructure related basic maintenance is not capital, basic maintenance expenditure is drastically reduced. And so, I mean, the state and the center and the revenue and the capital and the salary expense and non-salary expense, which is extremely crucial, particularly how to revamp the infrastructure in the classroom. I'm not talking about JNU. We are reasonably well placed, I suppose, but I'm talking about the entire country, the state and the center, other central universities and state universities in particular. There has to be significant budgetary allocation for to equip us digitally, the teacher and the student, so that we can restore some semblance of meaningful teaching learning process that used to take place in our classroom. That's all.
Yeah, so in a way, what Dr. Reddy, would you like to have the last word?
Yes. I would like to add Professor Chattopadhyay, saying that unless until there is a political will and determination from the ruling party, to give the priority to the education sector, it is happening some places here and there. For example, in Delhi, it is happening. In Andhra, it is happening. In Telangana, it is happening with dedicated efforts to boost the education. Here we're talking about the capital expenditure. Once, as Professor Chattopadhyay mentioned about the maintenance part, where I'm talking about the RT, just only 25% of the schools are meeting compliance, meeting the norms. 75% schools don't meeting the norms of the RT so far. So I'm talking only maintenance part. If other than the maintenance, if you want to actually create a good classroom with the furniture, green boards, libraries, labs, all those things, it requires huge capital. When you talk about digital point of view, it is at this point of time, that thing is a desirable thing, and it requires even much more than that. So most of the budgets are going for the revenue point of view, the salaries, running expenses point of view, because we have been as a foundation working in 24 locations in 12 states, working with the government schools. So on a pragmatic point of view, when we work there, the physical transformation of the school, the academic transformation and digital transformation, we look at from those perspectives, and it requires huge money for the physical transformation and digital transformation. unless until there is a increased allocation of the budget and political will will be not there. Always we are talking about just to maintain the status quo. Day by day, it is a deteriorating the situation, and those who are the affordable and they are going to the private school system, but those who are not affordable, they are struggling, and the gap is increasing day by day. So these are my comments, Professor. Thank you.
So I think, the panelists are almost unanimous about the fact that, a lot would depend upon how the state takes care of the requirements even today, in spite of the fact that, and particularly today and the years to come, not even, particularly in the light of the fact that, there are marginalized sections of the population and which cannot perhaps benefit them even digitally. And the numbers have gone up over the years because of the fact that, there has been unemployment rates are going up, families have lost their jobs, children are in great crisis. I mean, perhaps, these figures that Prativa was talking about needs to be collected. There has to be a much deeper analysis, in spite of the fact that, okay, we could be having a vision which could be transforming the education sector in years to come. Are we really, I mean, my question would be to all the panelists, are we, or do we have sufficient indications internationally to say that, well, this vision would work, or we are becoming guinea pigs in the field of education and the ICT? I really don't know, but whatever little that I know is that, we are perhaps, the later part is a much, captures this whole thing where, being such a huge country with such huge population, perhaps, the experiment is more likely to be done here, whether on the scale of digitizations and so on and so forth. What I have understood is that, the digitization could perhaps be a good supplement. It cannot be the thing, which perhaps through which even those skills which are really required to be imparted could be imparted. I mean, you require those interaction between teachers and students. Our experience in the last 2 years with digital platforms being used is very, very limited. I think, the kind of facilities that you have elsewhere, even in India, through interactive kind of classrooms and all that, which in fact our Google Classrooms also provide. But my experience has been that out of the 60 or 70 students that I have been teaching in a particular class, not even 5 of them, they really ask you questions. There is no interaction that happens, and you lose your spirit of interaction because you are speaking against a wall. So I mean, my larger question is, okay, you may not raise flags, or you may not become a source of socialization or dissent, but what will eventually happen to the society? The society cannot be made of atomized individuals. These are places of interaction: school, colleges, marketplaces. Can society be really reduced to? So there's a larger question which I'm not going into. That will require yet another session for all of us to perhaps look at it. Our limited agenda today was to, in fact, look into the direction in which 22-23 education budget is trying to take us. And I think, we have had fairly good amount of understanding of that. And there are concerns. I think, what Dr. Reddy was trying to point out, that in spite of the SSA and the RTE, we really haven't really achieved the goal where, we could provide that minimum physical facilities across to our students in the rural areas, largely in the rural areas. I mean, we know that. I mean, so, and that really calls for a large amount of capital expenditure. But on the other hand, we also have in fact reckon with the fact that, there are schools being closed down, and most of these schools which are being closed down in the name of rationalization are being closed down in areas which are tribal areas, where the mountainous areas where you can't really think about having a size of population. But the statistics that I have from nearly about 600, which I was really looking at in the last 3-4 days, tells me that even 250 schools with 250, 270, 300, 400 strengths of students have been closed down, in a kind of a rationalization program. And I have and I'm checking that with the UDIAS data also, and it seems to be supporting the fact that UDIAS itself has shown as to what has happened at the block level, that number of schools have come down. So there are pockets, where, and most of these pockets are largely in areas where you do not have political articulation. You have a huge program going on since 2017. I mean, so these are questions, which we have to perhaps also address alongside. And well, these are larger issues, but I think, they also would get reflected in the budgetary allocation. That so if the organizers would like to have some questions from the participants, if you can allow, and if our panelists still have the strength to hold on, I have no issues.
So I can ask a question. There
Yes,
are no
please,
questions,
please.
so that panelists can also take half a minute, 1 minute to also provide
Right.
forward. So this budget was also at India at 75, and now the budget is envisaging for India at 100, Amrit Kal budget as it is. So my question to all the panelists was that, does this budget now is also laying or envisaging the aim of our Vishwaguru? How are we going ahead with that? Do we have any roadmap, or what do you feel, or what can be done? Because all the panelists also touched, we have Atal Tinkering Lab, Imprint, and so many things also going on, MOOC courses by our top institutions, and also private sector we are trying to crowd in by world-class institutions and others. So how are we moving towards being the Vishwaguru, because there is China and other countries also coming so much. So that was my question, and we can also incorporate the way forward. Amrit Kal budget, and so how do
who would like to perhaps, my if you allow me, I'm taking the privilege of being the chair, but I think, let others come in first, and then I'll reflect upon it. So Professor Khare, Professor Saumen, Dr. Reddy, anybody? Yes, Dr. Kundu, anybody?
Yeah, if you want to say Vishwaguru, then in what context? Is it about the innovations perspective, or the learnings perspective, or the standards of the school system, or governance, or the facilities point of view? So we have to define that from which Vishwaguru. From my side, I just say that at least innovations point of view, we can become a Vishwaguru. I will give example. When we did a program called Teachers Try-Science program, it talks about any science teacher who is interested, who can learn from globally, and also who can tell the globe that how the science can be taught by using that platform. To use that platform in India, it requires in the schools the digital infra connectivity, the power, the net teachers' capability, and the science lab equipments. If we don't have all those things, how do you do that? To teach the rest of the world how to teach science using the low cost, no cost materials, teach science, and develop the lesson plans, and that we can upload to the global portal we're talking about to the rest of the world, without having what I mentioned earlier, the things, but still you teach the science. So where the innovation, where you use that your local environment, the stuff available, the low cost, no cost materials, and then somebody can take the compilation of those things and upload the portal. They become a Visva Guru, So till such time, everybody thinking of, if you want to use that platform, you need to have all these things X, Y, Z. But India as a country, here we know the art of tell the rest of the world with the minimal resources, with using our creativity and how we can demonstrate that in our thinking process and demonstrating. So that is one thing, one area we practically had experience and demonstrated, and the full potential is there. The second thing is that now there is an Atal Tinkering Labs. These are the labs is promoted by the Niti Aayog across the country, both in private and government schools, where how to help the children and the educators down the line next 5-10 years of time, seeing what is going to happen, promote the future skills where they can tinker, where they can tinkering and also using the design thinking process. There is no one way you have to think in a prescribed kind of thing. It is the children and the educators coming together and tinker and using design thinking process, come up with the prototypes which can solve the problems of the current situation. So these are the two examples that I am here quote, and I'm saying that we have the potential, and yes, we can become the Vishwa Guru with a vision and a mission and do things. I stop it here. Thank you.
Comment, sir.
Okay. Let me. That's a very good question, Arjun. First of all, let me put India in the context of global higher education. 2019, India produced 1,87,000 papers, Web of Science recognized, and India was fourth in the world after USA, China, and UK. Fifth position was Germany in terms of the total number of paper published. But in terms of the citation index, India was 12th in the world. So there is always a concern between what we are producing and whether commensurate qualities are getting reflected in what we are producing. Now, are we producing enough? If you look at the size of the Indian higher education, then 1.4 million teachers are producing 1,90,000 papers. And then a significant part of the papers are also being contributed by the research institutions, specialized research institutions. So the per capita production of paper is pretty low, but the issue is like this. The issue is that the expenditure on research, expenditure on R&D, as noted by the NEP 2020, is abysmally low in the case of India. So the research fund are mainly for the research institutions under the different ministries, but colleges and universities, we are not getting adequate funds. I am a social scientist. I'm talking about the scientists, physics, chemistry, biology, and the natural scientists. They are not getting adequate funds from the public, from the UGC to carry out their research. They are looking forward to the industry, but if you look at the total volume of research fund that should be infused into the system to make us more vibrant, innovative, because the size is huge. You must understand that we are having 1,000 universities and 50,000 colleges, plus a good number of standalone institutions. Huge size. NRF, I don't know how NRF is going to meet the demand, just single body, right? So the budget is not there. Possibly in the next year, the budget will get reflected for NRF. So that if you want to build up, lay a sound foundation of research, given the educational pyramid, I think we need to spend more on school education, more on the foundation. The foundation is fragile, and you are focusing on the elite part, that is a top section of the higher education system, to be part of the global. I believe you can count the citation and say that, okay, we are part of the global higher education, but if the foundation is weak, and I'm not very optimistic about we are doing enough for foundation state at the central level in the near future. If the foundation is weak, if teaching learning is, genuinely compromised, what Professor Sinha was mentioning, Professor Sinha, I'm being told by one of my students who is in USA now, that there, the teaching learning process means 80% of the class time, students participate, 80%. teachers speak for 20, 80%. And what they have done, they have really spent quite a good sum of money to conjure up a very 3D kind of ambience within the classroom. They spent heavily. They have got the money possibly, I know, so that you get a real-time 3D, very good feeling that you are part of the classroom, though you are attending online. Now, what would be the extent of blended mode, the online and offline? Is one way of saying a blended. But what is the composition of online and offline? That is also very important to see. But I believe that Vishwaguru, how do you measure our Vishwaguru-ness and what are the indicators of that? And are we doing enough for because it's a pyramid, are we doing enough at the basic level? Then we can think about being a part of the global higher education and announcing that, okay, we are the Vishwaguru.
Mona ma'am, yes.
I think all the panelists will be on the same plane on the question that you have put up. We all feel the same. Like being a Vishwaguru is more like a terminology which has been coined, which looks very fancy, but may not seem to be possible even in a distant future for various reasons. I have already said in my closing remarks that the budget may look futuristic, may be called futuristic, but there are fundamental issues and foundational issues to which Professor Saumen has already pointed out. Until and unless we are able to bridge those gaps, we cannot even think about being Vishwagurus. Like simply giving some financial incentives in order to either increase the inflow of foreign students, or by trying to bring in some kind of an internationalization by way of blended mode programs, etc. May not be enough for India to be matching with global standards to actually become a Vishwaguru. Also, it is important for us to identify our own strengths, to which many a times various experts refer to, and even in the national education policy, there is a reference made to the local knowledge, the traditional knowledge base that India is very rich with. But there is hardly any effort to either develop, to build records, to digitize those resources, if we are now wanting to enter into that area of reaching out to the new millennial population. So how is it that we would be able to make our local richness our own advantage, if at all we are targeting to even compete at the global level? Maybe some of the areas that be kept in mind, but certainly the very concept and the idea of Vishwaguru appears to be a very, very distinct one. Thank you, Professor Sinha.
Prativa, would you like to say something on Vishwaguru and Amrit?
No, I don't have much knowledge about this, but what I know is that among the BRICS countries, India spends the lowest in terms of spending. I mean, education as percentage of GDP is lowest among the BRICS countries. These countries like South Africa, Brazil, for long back, I mean, 2010-12, they were spending more than 6% of GDP on education. And obviously our foundation is weak, so it's very difficult, but the way the policy, the education budget, everything is, I mean, the vision, everything is going the way. A set of children or student will just leave higher education because they won't be able to continue with the way the tuition fees or things are increasing, and the other hand, those that the very creamy layers will go outside India to continue their study. So very few people will left, and I really don't know how this is possible, but yeah.
Yeah, if I may be just maybe allowed to put in just one line, that's why I really bothered about being a Vishwa Guru. I mean, because everybody is a guru in their own right. I mean, why do we want, among 100 and so many countries, do we want to say that, we will be your leader and we will be your guru, we'll be teaching you everything? No, that's not possible. I think, if we want to be, first, we need to be cultured and civilized enough to accept the fact that, yes, there are people who are as civil or maybe better civil than we are. I mean, that's what acceptance would perhaps create this basis for us to, in fact, improve our conditions. Because as long as we think that we are guru, and then, we do not really improve ourselves. There is so much that we got to really look at and take care. I don't know. I mean, unfortunately, this Amrit Kal has begun in a kind of a situation when there's a serious crisis. We can't think of 2 years ahead or maybe 5 years ahead. Maybe people have vision. I don't know what to say about 25 years ahead. India at 100. At least I will not be there. So why should I be dreaming about it? But the fact of the matter is that I think we have great challenges in the area of education. I think we got to be alive to those. We have huge disparities, and these issues will have to be addressed first before we really. And I think all panelists have said that the foundational aspect is very important. We may have the numbers because we are 1.35 billion people, so anything we do has huge numbers. So we may be publishing so much, 4th in the world rank. I heard this and I was feeling good about it, but then immediately it slumped down to the fact that, okay, if we see it in per capita terms, we have potentials. I think every country has potential, but this potential will have to be cultivated. And this potential cannot be cultivated if we think that there are a segment of people only who can perhaps have the capacity to think critically or can perhaps produce, and there are others who are going to be the second-class citizens, which I believe is the attitude which we got to fight. And as long as we have this attitude, we cannot become gurus, because gurus have compassion. And I think that's the first principle through which one could start communicating in the process of education. So that's the fundamental aspect. If we are not compassionate, we can't be gurus at all. That's my understanding. We can have the best of the world institutions here, but we'll never have the compassion, because this comes from a certain kind of a process, which I believe is situated not in an atomized kind of an institutional framework, which in fact develops through greater interactions and through the sense of equality. So that's what will make us gurus, if at all we become. But we should be happy that we are one of them. I don't think we should be really feeling sad that we have failed to become a guru. Okay, thank you, everybody.
There's a question.
Okay, there is a question. I didn't see this.
Yeah, there's a question from.
But so
On the
that's
chat? On the chat box?
Yeah.
But where is the question?
Surya Prakash Upadhyay, I want to know how Bihar's higher education has been led behind in this budget and how it can recover itself from graduate unemployment.
Okay, it hasn't come on my chat. I don't know.
No, you look at Q&A.
it's in Q&A. But would anyone like to take that? That's a very different direction question.
Okay, yeah. I was looking at the chat anyway. Yeah.
See, the union budget doesn't say much about Bihar higher education.
Bihar,
The
yeah.
Bihar,
So it's,
the budget of the state, the government of Bihar, that will be presented before the Bihar Vidhan sometime in March, that we'll talk about. But graduate unemployment is a big issue for all of us today, not
Yeah.
about Bihar. I mean, it's a big issue. And there are two reasons. One is that the kind of growth that we are experiencing, we are not creating enough job opportunities. And secondly, very often we, the graduates, I'm including myself as a graduate, we, the graduates, are being very often accused of not having the necessary skill to enter the job market. And these are very contestable issues. And in fact, Professor Sinha and Arjun and anybody can join and in the discussion. That's all from my side.
I can add just one point, maybe, I mean, not
Yeah,
very
yeah.
direct, but there is the one scheme, Rashtriya Uच्चतर Shiksha Abhiyan, and the Department of Higher Education, which is more responsible towards, I mean, centers grant towards state colleges and universities for better infrastructure and improvement. And if we look at the RUSA budget, the allocation actually has decreased. It has 3,000 crore in last year's budget estimate. Revised estimates only 793 crore, and this year again the allocation is 2,043 crore. That means from the previous year's budget estimate, the allocation is lesser, and last year couldn't spend more. So since this scheme is somehow is responsible for improving the colleges and universities at the state level, and so it has some impact on Bihar's state-run colleges and universities. This is one of the points. And another thing is the scholarship for students of colleges and universities, and the interest subsidy given to student loans. In both the cases, there is decrease, and so this will hamper the students to join the, college or continue or complete their graduation. It will affect. So might be that way Union budget is actually affecting Bihar's graduate education and employment to some extent. Thank you.
So, yeah, please.
So when we are talking about graduate unemployment, there are two aspects to it. Certainly, the preparedness of our graduates for the new aged skills that are in need, but also on the other hand, the availability of jobs. And we all know that India has been going through an extended period of jobless growth. And even in this new budget, when we are expecting more than 9% economic growth, and there is an announcement of creation of 6,000 more jobs in the country.
60 lakhs.
Yeah, 60 lakhs. Yeah, 600,000 jobs in the country. So that is something which we still wish to see as a wishful thinking. But even if we are able to create as many jobs, we may not be able to fill the gap between the demand and the supply of jobs in the market. There are many more graduate population, much more graduate population, which is in need of reasonably good quality regular jobs. And there is also now a greater emphasis on developing entrepreneurial skills and promoting the startup community and ecosystem in the country. So maybe these are some new areas which the higher education sector also needs to look at as to how to create job creators rather than job seekers. And as Professor Chattopadhyay has already mentioned, that it is also equally important for the states to own this responsibility rather than just looking at the center. So on that note, thank you very much, Professor Sinha.
Thank you. Are there, I think, Arjun, with your permission, we should conclude the session. I think I will conclude by saying thanks to all of you because, I have been making comments in between also. So it was nice interacting with all of you. Just one thing, that perhaps since, I have 3 people from finance. So I heard that, there is what we call is a capital expenditure is going to be to the tune of 2 lakh crores and so on, something like that. And somebody deconstructed it and it really didn't make me very, very, but then there is one part of it that the state governments do better in terms of capital expenditure, it will make available to them. So it will be faster. So I believe that, once that happens, maybe, the situation in this expenditure, if at all, educational expenditure would look brighter, but I don't think it's going to happen in that direction. So thank you all, and thank you very much. Thank you, participants who have been here.
you.
And we have been here for nearly 2 hours plus. Thank you, panelists, for a much longer than expected session. Thank you.
Thank
So
you.
to officially just 1 minute to give the vote of thanks. Now I invite Shravya to formally give the vote of thanks. So, capital expenditure, also human capital. So good we discussed education today. Shravya.
Thank you, sir. As we come to the end of this enriching and insightful deliberation on Education and Union Budget 2022-23, I, Shravya Yagnamurthy, researcher at IMPRI, Impact and Policy Research Institute, New Delhi, would like to formally propose the vote of thanks. On behalf of the IMPRI Center for ICT for Development, I thank our distinguished panel for taking out the time to be with us today. We are grateful to Professor Sachidanand Sinha for chairing the discussion and driving it with his valuable inputs and interventions. Thank you, sir. We thank our panelists, Professor Mona Khare, Dr. Prativa Kundu, Professors Saumen Chattopadhyay and Dr. Y. Suresh Reddy for sharing their pertinent analysis and perspectives on Budget 2022-23. And we are also grateful to all the participants who joined us here today on Zoom and on Facebook Live, or would be watching us later on YouTube or listening to our podcast. We hope that you continue to tune in to future episodes of Education Dialogue and our other web policy talks. Thank you again, and I wish you all a very good evening.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.
Thank you. Bye.